I'm Eric from EMS Off-Road. Today we're going to be talking about steering components on some of our Jeeps. Here we have a JK, and on the JK you have main steering components. We have our center link, which runs from tire to tire. The center link is also referred to as a tie rod. And on the tie rod, you do have your tie rod ends on both ends of this. Now on the JK, only one side is removable, and then the other one is part of the long side. Your tie rod, your two different tie rods, your center link will connect your left tire to the right tire. It keeps them from moving independently. That way when you steer, your two tires will steer the same with each other. And you have your drag link, which also runs from the pitman arm to this tire. And then on the drag link, again, you have the same operation going on that. You have your adjuster, you have your end, and then you have the long end, which is replaced in this one big unit. Your drag link provides the force to your steering. That is hooked from your steering box to your tires. That way when you turn your steering wheel, it'll push on this side, which then transmits back through the center link to the opposite side to steer that one. Involved with the steering as well, but more of a suspension component, is we have our track bar, which mounts the frame to the axle. Your track bar here on a coil spring or leaf sprung suspension, that locates your axle from left to right in the vehicle. If you took the track bar off your vehicle and you went to steer it, your axle or your body would move left to right and it would never steer the tires. So that is an essential part of keeping your steering working properly. Track bar angle must be relative to your drag link angle. You want these two items to be as parallel with each other as they can be. And as you see in this factory situation, we have a non-lifted Jeep. You'll see the angle from this pivot point to this pivot point is parallel to this pivot point to this pivot point. If your angles are parallel, when you hit a bump and this tire comes up, it's going to flatten this angle and it's going to make it essentially longer. If the track bar and the drag link are both on the same angle, you as a driver will not notice anything happen. The tire, it's not going to steer itself, it's just going to come up and it's going to come down and nothing's going to happen. If you have these on two different angles, where say the drag link was lowered by a drop pitman arm, but nobody ever put a bracket on, this is now flatter, and what will happen is when you hit a bump, the steering is going to turn, but the axle isn't going to move sideways at the same time, and it's going to give you what's called bump steer. When you hit a bump, it's physically going to steer the vehicle either to the left or to the right, depending upon the angle. Our components we have out by the wheel is, of course, you have your wheel and tire assembly. We have our tie rod end that's attached to the center link. You have your lower ball joint right here. And you have your upper ball joint here. You got your axle U-joint. You have your actual steering knuckle, which is going to be everything that the ball joints are attached to that would steer in a steering situation. The knuckle, also known as a spindle, if you're a two-wheel drive street rod person, they also call them spindles. The knuckle and the ball joint, they hold your brake rotor, your caliper, your wheel, and that's going to allow it to pivot on your inner knuckle and on your ball joints as well. The ball joints can pivot, they can turn, which allows you to steer. On your knuckle, you also have the inner knuckle, also referred to as an inner C. Gets that name because as you can see it, it has physically shaped like the letter C. And it goes from your upper ball joint to your lower ball joint. It would also be true in a kingpin situation as well. The axle U-joint that you have here that transmits your power from your inner axle to your outer axle can also pivot as well as spin. That allows you to have four-wheel drive and turn the tire while it can also steer. So we can steer it this way, and then it can still rotate. And then we can steer the other way and rotate as well. Steering stabilizers. All vehicles will have some sort of steering stabilizer system on that vehicle. This one here uses a shock that's attached to the center link and attaches to the axle housing. This shock is doing the exact same job as your suspension shock does. It dampens the force. So what will happen is when you hit a bump, it'll want to try and kick the tire out of your hand just briefly. Without the steering stabilizer, it would be a much more violent hit. It just slows it down. It doesn't stop it from happening, it just slows it from happening. The factory setup on a JK is a good setup. However, it's in a bad position for off-roading. Very commonly, this sits very low. Very commonly, people can hit this off of a stump, a rock, and then they twist it. And once it twists, it comes back further, and then it can get stuck on the diff and limit your steering. Also, you can also just bend it and it'll keep you from steering at all. Sway bars. So your sway bar is hidden way up here. And it runs from over to here and over to here. Now on the sway bar, you have sway bar links, which hook from the sway bar to the axle, both on the right and on the left side of the vehicle. What this does, this sway bar is a piece of spring steel. It tries to make what this tire does when this tire goes up in the air. It tries to make the other tire go up in the air at the same time, which when you are driving down the road, going around a corner, it helps remove this sway from the vehicle. When it wants to lean to the right, it'll resist that when you're going around a left-hand corner. Off-roading, however, it does limit some travel. And that's why very commonly you will see them with sway bar disconnects where you can physically unhook this from the axle. Or on the Rubicon or the new Saharas, they actually have an electric version built into the middle of the sway bar that will disconnect the left from the right. Other brackets that we have on the axle is that you have your lower control arm brackets. Again, on a JK you have both the right side one and the left side one. You have your upper control arm brackets here and here. On the JK, TJs, XJs, they are very common that they are cast into the center section. That's usually when you have a link on top of the center, it's usually cast right in and part of the actual housing. Other brackets that you have is you'll have your sway bar bracket we just talked about. We have your coil buckets. You have your track bar bracket. And of course your steering stabilizer bracket. Okay, so.
If you already did the introduction, now
Yeah.
you can just keep rolling and stuff.
Okay.
You can fix it, right, Rich?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, we're recording, so you can fire away.
I'm Eric from EMS Off-Road, and today we're going to talk some... right away, I can talk all the time normally.
I do it too.
It's all the time, don't worry.
All right. See how many times I hit my head off the diff?
Occupational hazard.
One, but they were on a
Ooh,
There you go.
They're great.
I don't even know if that's good. I'll just shut off again.
do that. Yeah, I'm gonna get you.
Update time. I don't want to update the time. And then he put 40s on it.
That'll fix everything.
Yep.
See, I'm telling you, that light is.
That light is just not
That was me.
So he's still recording on this one. Yeah, exactly. It's just one. He's still recording on this one too.